Welcome back into the wake-up call, ladies and gentlemen, on this Tuesday morning. All right, so we got a lot to talk about this morning. Bryan Peeples will be joining us again at 6:30. Really excited to have him stopping by, talking to us a little bit. Again, Bryan has a new show here on SuperStation 101 that airs on Saturday, and he'll tell us a little bit about that. And we'll also get into a little bit about who is Bryan Peeples and just talk to him a little bit about all that good stuff. So, what you need to know this morning is that a London driver has crashed into pedestrians and the barriers outside of Parliament this morning. Police outside of Westminster and the terrorism unit are on scene, and it has been called a terrorist attack. Again, this highly resembles the Westminster Bridge attack that happened recently in the United Kingdom. So we will be bringing you updates on that as they come through. Essentially, all that has happened now are pedestrians have been hit outside of Parliament, which is where the House of Lords and House of Commons are in the British government, which is similar to our House and Senate in the United States. And then the car rammed into the barriers that were put up outside of Parliament following the Westminster attack that happened about a year ago in the United Kingdom. And I was actually over in the United Kingdom when the initial Westminster attack happened. I was there. I was 5 feet away from the attack. I saw everything, and I understand the reasoning for these barriers because I was actually in the United Kingdom when these barriers were set up outside of Westminster, and they are very, very much needed. We'll actually just let you know exactly what's going on right now. And so this is straight from the New York Times. It says a car struck and injured several pedestrians and cyclists and then crashed into the security barrier just outside the Houses of Parliament in London early Tuesday, and what the police said they were treating as a terrorist attack. About a dozen armed police officers swarmed a silver Ford and pointed their weapons at it before handcuffing the driver. Quote, "He was arrested on suspicion of terrorist offenses," end quote, and the counterterrorism command was leading the investigation, the Metropolitan Police said in a statement. Quote, "At this stage, we are treating this as a terrorist incident." The police said the driver was in his late 20s, and there was only one person in the car, and no weapons were found at the scene, which is a stark contrast from the last attack that happened at Westminster, in which a man got out with a knife and started stabbing, I believe not only pedestrians, but also went after one of the guards on scene at Parliament, actually stabbed him and killed him, and then the police opened fire on that suspect. So this suspect was detained, you could say peacefully, but I don't think peaceful would be the word to use because, again, he hit pedestrians and ran into the barriers outside of Parliament. Nevertheless, the police detained him, and there is video of the police swarming in what appears to be under 30 seconds, which is an amazing response time. And obviously, outside of the UK's version of the House and the Senate, you're going to have more police presence, but the fact that they were on scene so quickly and stopped what could have potentially been further loss of life is absolutely incredible, and we take our hats off to those police. They're doing a phenomenal job, and we'll keep you updated as more information on that rolls through. Also, as most of you know, Peter Strzok was fired yesterday. We talked about that a lot in the first hour, but Peter Strzok was essentially the person that sent the text to Lisa Page in which he basically badmouthed President Trump while leading the investigation into President Trump. And it was a clear display of bias. Lisa Page testified as saying that Strzok meant exactly what he said, even though Strzok, in his testimony, kind of dodged and weaved and had a smirk on his face the whole time. But nevertheless, Page said he meant exactly what he said, and therefore the FBI demoted him once and then said they should demote. It was recommended that he be demoted again and suspended for, I believe it was 60 days. But the FBI just decided to say enough was enough and fire him. Personally, I think it's too little too late, but it just comes with the territory. Also, President Trump gave a green light to a $717 billion defense spending bill yesterday. And there's a lot of controversy surrounding that because it's believed that he snubbed John McCain. And what we were talking about before we went to the last break, Democrats are more positive about socialism than capitalism, according to a new Gallup poll. This is absolutely astounding to me. 47% of Democrats now view capitalism positively, down from 56% in 2016. And get this, 57% of Democrats now view socialism positively, and little has changed from 2010. But the capitalism numbers, the favoring of capitalism numbers, are now declining in the United States among the Democratic Party, but the socialism numbers are remaining constant. To me, it makes no sense how you can live in the United States, enjoy the luxuries and the life that is afforded by the capitalistic system, and be in favor of socialism. I don't understand how people like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez are being elected in New York. I don't get it. It's like, have we forgotten our history? And me and Dylan were talking about it a little bit before the break. But, Dylan, if you had to guess, or if you had to hypothesize, what would you say is the reason for this decline in the favorability towards capitalism? Without getting into the elements of socialism just yet, why do you think that capitalism, because it really breaks up the two numbers, right? 47% of Democrats view capitalism positively, and that's down 56%. Before we get into the section that favor socialism positively, why do you think that the numbers are dropping from 56% to 47%?
So let's go back to the World War II and Cold War eras.
Yeah.
Okay. It's because of those wars and Cold War that we have this socialism and communism is directly opposed to capitalism idea.
Yeah.
And that's been the case ever since. And because we are capitalists and our enemies in all of those situations were socialist or communist, we've demonized those ever since. And I feel like we're far enough removed from those incidents that we are getting away from the demonization of those ideologies. And I feel like it's almost becoming more accepted because we're getting because these younger generations who didn't live through those war eras are trying to fight back against this demonization, and they're going very far away from that demonization mentality to be accepting it.
You know, that's an interesting point because I can see the demonization point you're making. And again, just socialism on a basic element is a political and economic theory of social organization that advocates that the means of production, distribution, exchange should be owned and regulated by the community as a whole. And I just think that idea is totally counterintuitive to a capitalistic society, because I understand the demonization piece you're making. I think it has merit, and I think it does have a point. But what I'm saying is if you take the two systems just at a base level, right, and just basic definitions, I don't think they're compatible. Now, I think you could draw elements from each, and they could be in a system, because like you pointed out before we went to the last break, there are elements of our current state in the United States. Maybe they're not overwhelming, but we do have certain programs, certain things that emulate a socialistic system in some aspects, right? I'm just not seeing how here specifically, just based off of that basic definition I just read, how people are favoring that. Because it seems like something, I don't understand how people feel a sense of entitlement to other people's services. I don't understand why we think that means of production, distribution, and exchange should be owned by the community. I like the American ideal we have here, where it's basically like you don't get anything. Nothing is handed out to you. You basically pull yourself up by your bootstraps. I mean, it is the American dream, and the American dream, in essence, is a capitalistic dream. I don't understand how, when growing up in this American system, this American ideal, we can favor socialism.
I don't agree with favoring socialism as a whole, but there are several aspects that are socialistic that I agree with over how we are currently doing them.
It's a very interesting discussion. One we'll probably get into a little bit more tomorrow. 866-551-9933 is the number to call in. We'll try to get to your phone calls here shortly. Bryan Peeples joining us at 6:30. Excited for that interview. Don't go anywhere. This is the Wake Up Call.
Ready. Let's
Welcome back into the Wake Up Call, ladies and gentlemen. 6:30 on this Tuesday morning. Really excited to get your Tuesday morning kicked off with you. I hope everybody's having a great day. So I'm excited because we got Bryan Peeples joining us in studio early this morning. Bryan, thanks for joining us so early.
Man, it's too early to be listening to country music. I appreciate that, Dylan. Dylan knows that country music is like nails on a chalkboard to me.
So you live in Alabama, not a country music fan?
Yeah. When I was running for United States Senate, I was down in Mobile at Baldwin County Republican Forum. And I was bantering with Roy Moore, and basically he called me Walter Mondale, which I took great offense to and called him out on stage, but like in a really funny way. But, I was the only one. I was like, I made fun of it. Sometimes you just got to try and make people laugh. And so I said, it's like I can make this worse, everybody. And there was about 2,000 people in the audience. And I said, I think I'm the only Republican candidate ever in the state of Alabama who doesn't own a pickup truck, who does not hunt, does not fish, and I can't stand country music. And everybody was just rolling.
It's so true. And when you see the political ads, especially in this last political season we had, it's like people leaning up against a white picket fence with their truck in the background and a gun rack in the backseat. And it's like, it really just defines essentially.
Oh yeah,
what happens in Alabama.
Well, you look at Rand Paul when he was running, and he shot the tax bill with an AR-15. If you're in the South and you don't have a gun and you're a Republican candidate and you've got an ad that you're running, and you're not shooting something, or you don't have a pickup truck, or you don't have your wife and your kids and your dog and maybe your cats with you, there's something wrong.
So I definitely want to get into the U.S. Senate run in a second, but before we do that, if you don't like country music, where are you from? You from Alabama?
Well, I was born in Auburn, but growing up as a kid in corporate America 80s, kind of very similar to how corporate America feels right now. Everything was just expanding, and so father, right out of college, decided that he got with a company, and they just did the 90-day promotion. So we moved every about a year and a half to 2 years all across the country.
I was about to say, so give us the rundown. Where are like the top 5 places you lived?
New Orleans, Memphis, Kansas City, Denver. Birmingham.
Yeah. That's awesome. So I do want to get into the United States Senate run. I just have to know, if you don't like country music, where are you from, man? You're living in Alabama.
I grew up on classic rock and roll, so Queen is my all-time favorite band. But Beatles, Zeppelin, the good stuff.
Oh yeah. All right. So Senate run. So tell me about that, because I know a little bit about that. All I know is essentially you ran for Senate during the special election.
Yeah.
So tell me what that was like. Break down that experience for me.
It was an eye-opening experience. It was a little disheartening. One thing, everybody's like, man, because I was the youngest candidate. And everybody.
How old are you, by the way?
I'm not getting into that. I don't
what?
Listen, audience.
You're not a woman. I can ask you your age, man.
No, because there are some things that you need to leave to mystery.
Okay.
All right, people hear my voice on the radio. They don't need to know how old I am. So, I was old enough to qualify. I'll tell you that. Youngest candidate in the bunch.
Okay.
I was the only Republican candidate who showed up to NAACP meetings that was asked. And I want to engage in dissenting points of views. I think that's important, because if you're going to be representing an entire state, you need to know all the voices and all the opinions, because you need to represent all the people. And I wanted to run, one, because I'm from a different generation than Roy Moore.
Yeah.
And I also wanted to be antithesis to Roy Moore. I wanted to give people an outlet, somebody that they could get behind, somebody who was youthful, somebody actually knew the issues and could go to Washington and represent them.
Did you ride into the debate on
I did not.
Sassy?
I did not. It has been since I was in 6th grade since I rode a horse. I think I would be a little rusty.
Yeah. That's what you can name the horse, Rusty. Rusty versus Sassy.
Hey, there we go. Listen. I had a lot of good banter with Roy Moore, Luther Strange, Mo Brooks. It was a lot of fun. I actually had a lot more banter with the guys on the Democratic Party. Yeah. Those guys, kind of joked a little bit more. Definitely did not agree with any of their points of views, except for Senator Jones. He really did not engage with any conversations. He had a town hall here last night.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it was really interesting because I speculate that would be the case most of the time, right? Because when you're on stage with a bunch of other Republican candidates who basically, obviously you have some differences, but basically all ideologies are similar, right? If you're running on the Republican ticket.
Yeah,
like,
it's going to be different with the Democratic Party.
Yeah.
Because you're going to have more centrists than you are going to be, I guess, as you were leading into to the break before talking about socialism.
Yeah.
You've got a very small minority within the Democratic Party right now that is embracing this socialism ideology, which for the life of me, I cannot understand. There's just a bunch of misinformed individuals that are out there that do not understand the terrors of what socialism can bring.
So I do want to point or kind of press that question to you that we were talking about before. What do you think is causing that shift to have the Democratic Party going more socialist? Ignorance?
They just don't understand history.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't understand where socialism come from. In my opinion, one of the worst presidents that we have ever had was FDR.
Mm-hmm.
He put government reliance onto this country and grew the executive branch in a way that it should never have been done. And then the next worst president was Richard Nixon.
Mm-hmm. I was about to say, if you're coming on here
Richard Nixon was a horrible president.
Yeah.
Took us off the gold standard. Just was completely, totally trash president. Incredibly brilliant man.
Yeah.
I don't know if you know anything about Richard Nixon or know anything about his history.
A little bit, yeah.
Completely brilliant. But he introduced a healthcare bill that was far and beyond what the ACA was. So he kind of had more socialistic kind of tendencies in himself. I mean, you have a government that now prints money because of him, and our deficit are almost directly related to him and his policies and how damaging that has been.
Yeah. So based off of going off of that and transitioning a little bit, so tell us what you're in now, and then we'll talk about what you did before that. But so you got a radio show here, right, on Saturday afternoons?
From Saturday evenings.
Saturday evenings.
The only live broadcast show from 7 to 8 p.m. every Saturday.
Okay.
And it's called For the People with Bryan Peeples. My co-host is Sylvia Rogers.
Yeah.
She's Lockett News' lead news anchor.
Okay.
And basically, when I was getting the show together, I wanted to take my experiences as being a United States Senate candidate and what I wanted to do as a United States Senator, representing the people, talking about the issues, representing the issues, and breaking it down. This is why you need to pay attention to this. This is why this is important.
Yeah.
And that's what we're doing with the show, is we're taking an issue or two, because we only have an hour.
Yeah.
And taking an issue or two and breaking down something like this past week, we talked about Alex Jones and the conservative ban and the shadow, by that Twitter and the other companies are doing, and talking about Colin Kaepernick and NFL kneeling and why it's important to fully support the First Amendment and everything that goes along with it, regardless of whether or not you agree with what's saying. Because Alex Jones is a nut.
Yeah.
I mean, he's a kook. He wears tinfoil hats on his show and talks about conspiracy theories, like zany conspiracy theories. And he has an odd obsession with toads and frogs for some reason. But at the same point in time, you have to be able to support him in a platform where he can talk about crazy stuff like that.
Yeah.
But you also have to support the NFL players who are kneeling, or their rights to kneel. You don't have to support what they're kneeling for or the reasoning behind it or your interpretation of it, but you do have to support their right to make those actions and to say and to protest the way that they want to peacefully, because that's what the First Amendment guarantees.
Yeah.
Now, just because you do something doesn't mean it'll be accepted socially.
Yeah.
And we've seen the backlash, and you've got to be able to accept those consequences. So it's breaking down those issues on here's two very differing things about the First Amendment and why you should pay attention to it and how it affects you. Because, I mean, you look at what social media giants are doing and these tech giants are doing. They're interpreting their ideology on conservative voices and saying, well, this doesn't need to be happening. But that's not something new.
Yeah.
This is something that, you look back at Rush Limbaugh, the IEB network, and back in the 80s, in early 90s, there was legislation that was passed to try and prevent conservative talk from being heard. They did not. The liberal media did not want to have a dissenting point of view that was a counterbalance to them.
Yeah. So I do want to get into that a little bit more, specifically the NFL controversy, because that was, as somebody who was trying to go to the legislature and be involved in the legislating process, I definitely wanted to ask you about the NFL issue.
Yeah.
So we'll get into that after the next break. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going into the final 15 with Bryan Peeples. Don't go anywhere. This is the Wake Up Call. Welcome back into the Wake Up Call, ladies and gentlemen. So before we went to break, we're hanging out with Bryan Peeples, and he brought up a really good point, and that was the topic of the NFL kneeling controversy and the protection of the First Amendment from censorship. And, you point to the NFL kneeling controversy as well as the Alex Jones controversy. So I want to get your take on specifically the NFL kneeling controversy, because Sunday, the first round of games, or we could say last week, because they were spread
it's
out,
been 2 weeks in a row.
Exactly.
Now. I mean, come on.
So, what do you think about that?
Here, you're going to have people out there who are going to see injustices in life.
Yeah.
You can see injustices. I can see injustices. But if you don't live in a community that day in, day out, your whole society is predicated on past injustices, and so it's hard to break away from a certain way of doing things, and sometimes a certain mindset. Sometimes you're so narrowly focused on something that you can't see past things, or you've got some blinders on and you can't see everything. You can only see what you want to see in front of you. We do have some issues with our criminal justice system. I mean, that's, when I was running for United States Senate, that was one of the things. I was the only Republican out there that was like, hey, listen, we need to focus on our criminal justice system.
So give me one, I'm just curious, give me an example of that. Like, what's one thing that you think is wrong with our criminal justice system?
Nonviolent crimes. I mean, if you get booked for marijuana possession, there's no reason why you should have a minimum sentence of 10 years in jail. None, not whatsoever. But then the antithesis of that is you have Paul Manafort, who is in solitary confinement 23 hours a day for fraud. And the reason why they took him from house arrest to immediately put him in solitary confinement for 23 hours a day for a white-collar crime, and I hate saying white-collar, but a nonviolent crime, was because, one, their excuse was, well, we fear for your safety in general population. But that's not what they're doing. They're using all the powers they can to try and break them. Yeah. And when we have a criminal justice system that can apply that to Paul Manafort, they can apply that to me and you, Baylor.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter, the federal government, the state government. I mean, you look at what was going on here in the state with the sheriff that was taking funds. When you talk about the criminal justice system, you got to talk about the entirety of the criminal justice system and prison reform, because there's a lot of things that go hand in hand with that. Yeah. Our laws are geared toward punishing people who are of poor financial status. Yeah. It's easier in this country if you're financially privileged. And, that's one of the things I wanted to fight for. Yeah. And make sure that we get legislation, we change that. Because, really, the only place that you can change that is in the legislation. Or legislator. Legislative branch, sorry. The coffee hasn't all the way kicked in quite yet. That's important. Yeah. So when you're looking at... I don't believe there's systematic oppression within this country on any community. I do believe that there are disproportionate disadvantages to those who are not financially privileged, to those who are financially privileged. We see this every day. You can look at the Clintons. Yeah. You can look at the Trumps. Yeah. These are people who are these are families, the Kennedys, financially privileged, who can do things that you and I cannot. Yeah. Who can get away with things that you and I cannot, regardless of whether or not it's a crime or not. That's not within the conversation. But just saying their day-to-day lives. Yeah. It's like, when Donald Trump was on the campaign trail, he said, I can go down the middle of New York City and I could shoot somebody and get away with it. There are those people out there who are financially privileged to a point that actually feel that way. And you see that in the representation within Hollywood. You know, that you have people who, you know, portray, and even a lot of the actors, they portray it that way. That's really where all the privilege and everything comes from.
Yeah.
But when you're looking at the NFL kneeling, these players have a right. But let's put it into perspective. There's only 5,000 NFL players in total.
Yeah.
And that's, you know, starters, backups, practice squad. 5,000 total. You've got a percentage of a percent who are actually taking a knee or standing in solidarity with their fist raised. Let them. If these individual teams, like Jerry Jones, Cowboys, says, this is my team, my rules, you're not going to do that, that's fine. If the Miami Dolphins owner wanted to do the same thing, that's fine. If Art Over and the Falcons say, hey, you guys, you want to take a knee, that's fine. We're not going to do anything about that. I do not believe that the NFL as a whole should have a policy. It should be left up to the individual owners because the owners own the teams and they participate into the NFL organization, which is a nonprofit organization. And, you know, nonprofits shouldn't be doing that. But, you know, if you go to work and you do something that is going to damage your ability to perform your job or have negative consequences because you're a representation of a brand. So if you do something here on this radio show and it doesn't show the brand of WYDE, then, you know, you're going to suffer the consequences. You take risks.
Yeah.
But you also know that when you take a risk like that and you put yourself in the limelight, that you got to be able to take the consequences.
So the problem that I have with this is it seems like a lot of it is being painted as a free speech issue. And I understand that angle, right, if we're in a public place. But, I mean, as you pointed out, I think that it should be up to the owner's discretion. I don't think it's a free speech issue.
It's
because
a free speech issue, but it's also at the discretion of the individual team owners. I do not agree with President Trump in him getting involved and saying that you need to be fired, suspended without pay. That's wrong. The president, if it was just Donald Trump as being an individual citizen of the United States, that's fine. Everybody has their opinion. You do that. But once you start sitting in the office, you're representing that office.
The president
and you don't need to be tweeting that. And he's continuing the conversation.
Yeah.
When he doesn't have to. He's making it worse. And the base gets riled up because it's now the original intent has lost its meaning. There's still those that are trying to raise awareness for what they were, but now it's all about patriotism. And is this really truly what patriotism is? But forced patriotism is not patriotism at all. Forcing somebody to do something against their will in the United States of America is not patriotic.
But going back to specifically the free speech aspect of it, I don't think it's a free speech case at all because when they enter into a consensual contract, right, they agree to a behavioral standard. And in that behavioral standard, it can say, you don't kneel.
But that like Jerry Jones, Dallas Cowboys, he has that. I don't know about the other 31 teams except for the Dolphins.
But I don't understand how it could be castigated as a free speech, not castigated, how it could be coined as a free speech issue then, because I don't think it is, because it's taking place in a private business. So that's what I'm kind of confused on here.
I mean, you have a public limelight. If you're Colin Kaepernick, you're the main quarterback for the 49ers, you're the brand. You all know that the quarterback is the star, Drew Brees, Michael Vick.
But they're still in that private entity. They
are. But you also, but then that's up to the individual owner whether or not they want to. You know, you have freedom of speech everywhere.
Yeah,
you can say whatever you want to say at any given point in time throughout the day, regardless of where you are.
But they have the right to fire you.
They have the right to fire you. The police have the right to come and arrest you if you yell fire within an auditorium and you cause a mass stampede of people.
Yeah.
The police have the right to arrest you if you're in a plane and you yell bomb and there's no bomb. You have the freedom of speech. You have the right to say those things. But you also have the right to suffer the consequences if it has a negative reaction.
Very well put. So, Bryan Peeples, appreciate you stopping by, hanging out with us this morning.
Yeah.
Let everybody know where they can hear you, what the show's called, all that good stuff, and where they can find you.
For the people with Bryan Peeples, you can check us here at 101.1 WYDE on Saturdays from 7 to 8. You can live stream us at bryanpeeples.com and follow us on social media and so you can know who our guests and the topics are.
Sounds fantastic. Thanks for hanging out with us this morning.